from the NFL. All right, Adam Schefter joining us on SportsCenter. You just posted on social media, Adam, news surrounding John Harbaugh. What can you tell us?
Arda, the New York Giants and John Harbaugh are now finalizing an agreement to make him the next head coach of the New York Giants and to make him the first head coach hired in this tumultuous coaching cycle. No team was more aggressive than the New York Giants in pursuing John Harbaugh, who spent Wednesday in the Giants facility meeting with various team owners, officials, even players, including their quarterback Jackson Dart. And obviously, he was supposed to be talking with the Tennessee Titans and the Atlanta Falcons. Right now, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen because all focus is on getting a deal done with the New York Giants. The Giants look like they're going to be getting the coach that they wanted, and he is going to be the guy that succeeds Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka to bring stability to this organization that has struggled to capture that. Somebody who coached 18 seasons in Baltimore, the Giants want to have a similar type of run in New York with the Giants.
All right, Adam Schefter, breaking news here on SportsCenter. Thanks for your time, Adam.
They're going to see what happens to this roster this offseason. I think it could be one of those transformative offseasons where you see Aaron Rodgers obviously potentially move on and maybe other key figures as they spark a rebuild. But when a job like the Pittsburgh Steelers opens up, you're going to get a lot of candidates kind of lining up to go after this job. And I think Flores might be at the top.
Yeah, you talk about it, one of the best defensive minds that are currently in the business, but the Vikings are aggressively trying to retain their guy. We'll see how much luck they have in doing that, but definitely one of the hot names on the market. But as for their division rivals, another one of the longest tenured headmen out in the city of Baltimore, perhaps maybe the most attractive of the jobs available when you're looking at the Ravens. You have Lamar Jackson, you have a winning culture, but who best complements this, I'm going to call it a ready-to-win roster?
Yeah, there's no doubt. This is the #1 job in the NFL because you have a 2-time MVP in Lamar Jackson. There's no other team that offers that level of elite play, stability at the quarterback spot. So if you're any coach worth your weight in a visor or a headset, you're going to want this job. And I think that Cliff Kingsbury makes a lot of sense for the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, a former head coach, so this would be his second time as a head coach in the NFL. I think that's valuable for a team like this, as you referenced, ready to win now. I don't think that they want to maybe try their hand at a first-time head coach because what if it doesn't work out and maybe he's a little too in front of his skis? It just there's a lot of questions there. With Cliff Kingsbury, I feel like we kind of know what we're going to get. Obviously, worked with Kyler Murray in Arizona. It worked out for a little bit, but it kind of fell off towards the final stretch there. But then he goes to Washington and works with Jaden Daniels, who has a very similar skill set to Lamar Jackson. And what do they do in year one together? You're talking about a fantastic rookie season that took you to the NFC Championship. Those are the type of results that the Baltimore Ravens want to have. So from a stylistic standpoint, I think this makes sense for Lamar Jackson. And again, it's an experienced head coach. For a team that wants to win right now, I think I would lean towards a coach like Kingsbury, who's going to his second job in the NFL, as opposed to a first-year guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He has that experience with Patrick Mahomes back in Texas Tech. He has that experience, like you mentioned, with Kyler Murray. And I think he's one of those guys that has that experience, maybe elevating some of those mobile quarterbacks. So maybe that's a perfect marriage right there. But I do want to head out west as the Raiders. They've had 6 new head coaches over the last 9 seasons. Now, obviously, they'd like a little bit of stability there, but who gives them that option potentially?
Yeah, certainly want some stability because I think they're paying like every head coach now, it feels like, in a prior contract. Just hasn't worked out for them. So it's been an expensive endeavor, which is kind of why I don't think they're going to get a second tread head coach, one of those guys looking for a second gig, because it's probably going to command a little bit more money. So I think a guy like Clint Kubiak is someone who I find would be really interesting, because as much as we're joking about the Raiders right now, I think that this is a really interesting job for somebody just like him, who has an offensive mind. And this is somewhat close to a blank slate. Obviously, the Pete Carroll, Geno Smith situation, it didn't work out. Geno Smith's not going to be their quarterback in 2026. They have the #1 overall pick that potentially could be Heisman Trophy winner Fernando Mendoza. It's still obviously early in the process, but you're probably going to take a quarterback #1 overall, probably going to be Mendoza. You bring in a young quarterback like that with already some interesting skill position players like Ashton Genty, you spent the first-round pick on, Brock Bowers at the tight end spot. That's a very interesting nucleus that you already have to start building up your offense along with your cap space. And I look at Clint Kubiak, look at him over the last couple of years. He had the New Orleans Saints punching above their weight as the offensive coordinator there in 2024. This season, he has the Seattle Seahawks really firing on all cylinders, continuing the ascension of Sam Darnold at quarterback, has Jackson Smith and Jigba breaking franchise records. So I think that would really be kind of that perfect blend of you bring in a young quarterback, you pair him with a young offensive mind, and that's how you start your rebuild.
Yeah, one of the top offensive minds that are available, and you got to think about it, he does have that experience under Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDonald, obviously where he is right now, Kevin Stefanski, so maybe it could be a good fit right there in Vegas. But similar to the Raiders, I mean, the Cardinals, they have sat in the cellar of the West for a number of seasons, and they have a solid defense, and whether they decide to move on from Kyler Murray, that's still an unknown. But who could best help turn this franchise around?
I don't think they're going to look far. I think they're going to look in that division, and you're not going to like this.
I'm not going to like this. I know where we're going.
You're not going to like this because we're going to go to San Francisco. We're going to pluck Robert Saleh out of the Bay Area. We're going to bring him to the desert because he is someone who I think is going to be really good in his second go-around as head coach. Just didn't work out in New York. When you draft Zach Wilson, the results were not going to be that good. It just wasn't that encouraging in terms of what they were able to do at the quarterback spot, and obviously we know what happens with Aaron Rodgers getting hurt early in that tenure, and again, that position just never really getting figured out. But everywhere else, I did like what they were able to do defensively. He's only followed that up here with the San Francisco 49ers, having them playing very well despite a bunch of different injuries. And so there may be some trepidation by Robert Saleh if he's looking at the Arizona Cardinals and saying, you're going to move on from Kyler Murray. What are we going to do at quarterback? I don't want to go into a situation again that puts me in a weird spot at the most important position in the sport, but you're still talking about a top 5 draft pick at the 2026 NFL draft. You're going to get something for Kyler Murray. You have really interesting weapons in Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., even Michael Wilson down the stretch this season. So I do think there's an avenue for a quarterback in the weapons there. I think this is an attractive spot for someone like Saleh.
Yeah, they do have the weapons, but even looking at what Saleh's currently doing right now, he's doing more with less. So imagine what he could do out there in Arizona once they figure out that quarterback position. But hey, how about the Titans? Because, I mean, they have the hardest part of that head coach's job squared away. They've got last year's first overall pick in Cam Ward under center. They've got a ton of cap space to assist in their rebuild. So who's the best fit to go along for the ride in Tennessee?
I think Kevin Stefanski would be really fun in Tennessee. And you reference it. This is something where I think he would find really attractive. And this is kind of one of the more underrated openings in the NFL. Obviously, we have some big organizations like the Pittsburgh Steelers that we were talking about, Lamar Jackson in Baltimore you could pair yourself with. But Tennessee has a lot to offer because they're a blank slate. And as you noted, they do have the quarterback situation figured out. I do think that Cam Ward is a guy you can build around. One of the more underrated stories of the second half of this regular season was Cam Ward kind of figured it out. He was playing really well down the stretch despite not having a real superb roster around him. What will change that is a top 5 pick at the 2026 NFL draft that you don't have to use at quarterback, over $100 million in salary cap space. You bring in someone like Kevin Stefanski, who he doesn't have to worry about a quarterback situation like he did in Cleveland during his tenure there. You have stability there. You have an offensive-minded head coach. I think that checks a lot of boxes, especially in an AFC South that just feels like there's always turnover, teams rising and falling all the time. Who says it couldn't be Tennessee in short order?
I think what you said makes a lot of sense. Maybe one of the underrated vacancies that are currently open, considering the pieces that they do have in play and where they're picking. So maybe that's something that you could see them, a nice little marriage there. But hey, let's talk about Stefanski's former team, because Cleveland, I mean, in a nice way to put it, Cleveland's been a bit of a circus, but they have their ringleader in Shedeur Sanders. This team hasn't owned a division title since, I mean, the Reagan administration. So who do you see maybe orchestrating this big ring?
Yeah, the Cleveland Browns, they're going through it, right? They seem to perennially be going through it. But I do think that this is one of those rare instances where they might actually look internally, and that's just bringing defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz as their head coach. And again, this is a rare thing because typically when you fire your head coach, you're cleaning house throughout the entire staff, right? But I don't know. I think that he has a legitimate shot at getting this job. And you look at what was their strength and what has been their strength over the last handful of years. It's been that defensive side of the ball. He has a tight relationship with those defensive players, key among them Myles Garrett. There's belief in him in that locker room. So who's to say that he couldn't just take on the head coaching role for the Cleveland Browns and really lead this organization, starting with that defense first? Now, ownership probably is going to want